Afternoon everybody, it's Monday the 4th of September. As you can see, a bit grubby, and we are combining, as promised, regenerative spring wheat. Sun is going down on what has been quite a tricky day really. As you can see here, we're averaging 4 tons, and the moisture is 11 down here. So just over my shoulder, just out here, is where we had our drainage plan put in after last year's really poor harvest. You can remember out there we near enough had no yield at all. So I'm interested to see if our drainage plan has had an effect. I'm pretty encouraged by this so far. I am having a little bit of trouble with my sieve losses on this combine today, but so I've been fiddling around, and that's been my challenge, and part of the reason you haven't had that much footage from today. So here you can see a comparison between the yield map for 2023 and the yield map for 2022, and it's this area in the red circle that I'm comparing that we drained this winter, and as you can see there's a marked improvement since 2022. However, what is noticeable is that even though the red area has improved, the average yield across the whole field has only increased by 0.1 of a tonne per hectare. And in fact, last year the crop was planted on the 6th of May as a result of the spring oats failure, and this year it was planted on the 11th of April. So we would expect to see a significant increase in yield, but I think this is a better reflection of what a challenging year spring crops have found 2023. So that's Monday everybody, we're making good progress. We'll report on more spring wheat tomorrow, and hopefully get a comparison between drilling dates and yields from those. So thank you very much for watching, more next time. Good afternoon everybody, Tuesday afternoon, and we're back on the combine. Another beautifully sunny day, I'm pleased to say. So starting with the lessons, we have combined a small field in this block called Reg, and as you will see from the yield plan, it achieved over 4 tonnes a hectare. So that's for regenerative spring wheat on less than 50 kilos of N. So quite really pleased with that. But we are currently combining a horrible little field. It's also quite wet historically, and the reason for bringing it up is rare that you get these quirks of timing, and it offers a wonderful learning lesson which I'd like to share with you all. I just wanted to draw your attention to the dividing line here between this bit of crop and this sketchy, horrible bit here. It's got some bird food over there. Now, this was an abortive drill, so we started drilling this bit and we stopped, and we came back 2 weeks later and drilled that. And it's rare that you so keenly see the difference in management decisions, but I just wanted to share that with you. So we recently lost a local farmer who was very well regarded and known for being fastidious about soil conditions and only letting his machinery cultivate when conditions were exactly right. And in this field, because it's small, there was a small opening when the weather improved in the spring, and I shot out here and tried to do some drilling before soil conditions were right. And as you can see from this video, there's a marked difference between the two halves of the field. Here again you can see it to a line up here, running up the field. This bit is the bit that was drilled early, and this bit where we came back under better soil conditions. A real lesson, certainly to me, if not to others. So the takeaway lesson is, when confronted by marginal conditions, in the case of the spring where it's going to get better, and this is one of the reasons I've moved towards spring crops and away from winter, is because in the winter our soils are getting progressively wetter, making the decision even harder, whereas in spring they're getting drier. So when they're getting drier, does it really matter if I wait an extra couple of days? Surely not. Whereas in the winter, if I wait for the soil to dry out, it might never dry out again. So hence why I think soil conditions are really important, and in my system, on my heavy clay soils, it's easier to wait in the spring than it is to wait in the autumn. So that was one of our takeaway lessons. So here we have an example of an environmental scheme. This was meant to be a 2-year wild winter bird food mix. It's turned mostly to grass, and this is the poor bit of wheat demonstration. Whilst out there in this small and miserable little field, I thought I would also share a little anecdote. We got approached last week by a house owner next door. His neighbours this field. He's probably sick and tired of looking at this relatively poor crop of wheat. Anyway, the point was, he asked if I would be willing to plant this field as a wildflower mix. He was willing to rent it as long as I maintained it. And this kind of reminds me of a bit of a debate I'm reading about at the moment around environmental services, and whether farmers should be paid for environmental services. And obviously we're all aware of the debate, farmers being paid for public goods. But this is slightly different. This is almost the private sector asking to help. And it's not that this is a market where we haven't been before. We've done other things like grown grass for people's, so they can park their cars for a wedding. But it is starting to really interest me that the private sector might be beginning to ask farmers to grow the wildflowers and non-cash crops. And so for me, being able to grow what consumers actually want, i.e. in this case wildflowers, is something really interesting and something that I want to pursue further. And I think it's a very good demonstration that farmers are responding to the demands of the market. One final comment about this field. This hedgerow along here, it's a bit difficult to see in the dust, but this is our boundary. We don't control the green. It's actually part of the CSS experiment I've got going. We're going to coppice that hedge and watch it to grow back. And the same goes for this hedge up against the road here. We've got a number of really low trees that are beginning to hamper machinery. I've just finished reading Jake Fine's book, Land Healer, and I'm quite interested, and for some time I've been, as you've seen, experimenting with tree pruning and wood chip and composting that wood chip. But I'm really interested to see if we can use, instead of cutting hedges, whether we can reliably use tree shears and chip in the yard. And there's been lots of issues I've had with it trying to that huge chipper I get in is all well and good, but it needs hard standing and therefore doesn't really work very well coming to the field. So I think this year we're going to try with the push trailer, shearing the hedge and then taking it to hard standing. So that's the experiment for this year, and builds on my payments under the CSS to start doing that. Good afternoon everybody, welcome back. It's Wednesday afternoon, fingers crossed we're in the last bit of harvest, very end, but we shall see how it goes today. I don't want to say anything that might jinx it, but we're in some development land. It's spring wheat. I can't quite remember how much nitrogen it's got. I think we gave it a fair amount of solid N rather than foliar, but I will check the records. So this is some development land that we farm for a landlord. We're never ever sure when it's going to be available, so I tend to leave it in spring cropping just because then it reduces my investment in case over between September and February he decides to take it back. It's on an annual cropping license, so it's very short term. The issue we've had last year, very late, we planted winter wheat and then they decided to do archaeology digs in the winter wheat, left huge mounds of soil, and it was really difficult to combine. And also it was in the wet winter, so we had digger marks all over the place. It was a proper nightmare last year. So we did come through here with a carrier in the spring to try and make the combining a little bit easier, but there are still lumps, as you will see, which means that I can't run my header really low, just because when we hit these bumps it obviously wobbles the header quite a lot. There you can see a classic section where the header, it must be a bit because there's one there and then there's one on the other side. As you can see here, this is where I'm struggling for height, and the combine's obviously hit the ridge and then deviated, and there we go. I'll go back over the lump again, a bit unrough. So very thin, it's very short, less than a foot high, and the yield, there we go, 2.3. I finally sorted the straw out, and I've got my lower sieve set pretty tight now. Seems to be working. Losses aren't too bad. I would say that spring wheat always seems to really die back, where compared to winter wheat, where you get a big body of crop and you're still combining a lot of straw when you come in with the combine. Spring wheat really seems to die back and loses a lot of height, and oh crikey, we're really struggling with a very short crop. As a result, running the header really low, and that has generated challenges. What we found since combining the beans is that the heavy rain has made the soil really fluffy. Must be a great texture to plant cover crops into. Unfortunately, we're still faffing around with the combine, but it's beautiful fluffy structure. But the challenge is that if you touch it, it's bulldozing really quickly. And when you combine that with this very low crop, it's making for challenging conditions. So we had lots of header issues yesterday, and in fact the John Deere has fingers underneath the header that control the height of the table, and 3 of those have worn out, so we had to replace those. And the problem we're having is because we're running so... Oh, that was another rough one. Can pick up flints as well, and flints going through the combine doesn't make for a very nice outcome. So those are the challenging conditions. Hopefully I will report in later this afternoon. So we've got a spot yield about late 4s here. 1, I thought it was going to go up to 5 for a second there. Crop a lot taller here. However, this is symptomatic of the year. Over there you can see the dark marks of the creeping thistle. It's actually blown in from HS2, which is on the horizon there. But I'm not sure if we're going to be able to finish tonight. I have other business commitments tomorrow. I have got a combine driver lined up, but the weather's looking pretty good, so maybe I'll have to finish it off on Friday. Good afternoon, Friday afternoon, and we're in our final field. It's going quite nicely. It's like medium height, which makes a real difference. Yield is hovering around 3 tons a hectare, and I have to say it's going really nicely. It's beautiful weather, all makes a difference. Last field, good weather, and I particularly like it because it's wheat, and it means that I'm getting a nice clean combine rather than finishing on spring beans, which puts a lot of soil through the combine at the end. So hopefully you can see there's a little bit of a thistle patch there, and that is the boundary between this field here, which is long-term arable, and the far side up there, which is historic grass. As we get closer you'll see a bit of a change of colour in the wheat, and that's it, about 2.9 tons spot rate. Now let's see what happens. As you can see here, the old ditch line, bit of a change in height. Might have to slow down a little bit here. Just go over any hump that's there. There was a little bit of a hump. Right, back on auto. And this is a very unhelpful chunk that HS2's taken in the middle of the field. And we go back to the spot rate for the grass field, and there you go, over 3.65. So this is some of the healthier soils. Yeah, still holding at 3.5. So we'll have a look at that on the map later on, but we're pushing on, hopefully, our final day. So here you can see the yield map, which shows an average yield for the whole field of 3.2 tons. And if we do a specific area within the John Deere mapping, you can see the long-term arable yields 2.9, whereas the higher health area coming out of grass yielded 3.5, comparing to a whole field average of 3.2. So overall I would say that the regenerative wheat has been quite disappointing. My whilst driving assessment is, and from the data I've seen so far, is that the best crop came from where we did do some movement in the spring. Now whether that is just because there's a bit more nitrogen available when the plants are small, and I think it certainly does help plant population as well. I think there's better till, hides it from the birds, all things which contribute to a better plant population and a better stand as a whole. I think that is part of the reason we've invested in the Claydon TerraStar, so fingers crossed it delivers what we want. And now it's time to concentrate on getting those cover crops in. So thank you very much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, click on the little bell to get notifications of when our next video goes live. See you next time. Bye.